Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's English lesson. I'm going to be trying out something a little bit new. You might have noticed my swanky new whiteboard paper that I've got. I'm going to be writing on it as we go. Today's lesson is all about direct speech and using our inverted commas for it. Now, this is something that you will have done in Year 4. What I'm going to talk about today is going to recap quite a lot of information from Year 4 and perhaps also add some new bits in as well, okay? The reason I'm going to be doing this as I go is I'm going to kind of keep a a steps to success list that we can refer back to. If you can't see it particularly clearly, don't worry, I'm going to put it on the website as well. Okay, so before we begin, I've put talk to your partner here. You can talk to your imaginary partner, a friend, yourself, whatever you want. What do you think are the essential ingredients for writing speech? Could you come up with an example? So imagine you were using speech. What would you use in it and what would your example be? Okay, right, hopefully you've paused me and had a go at that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go forward and we're going to refresh through all of the rules for using direct speech. Okay, so I'm going to try and rattle through quite quickly. Like I said, if you want to be making your own notes for this as well, then that's absolutely fine. Okay, so to begin with, I used the word, I think I said speech marks perhaps earlier, or inverted commas. They are basically the same thing, and it's the most important thing. When we're using direct speech, that's talking about what someone has actually said. So we're writing exactly what someone said, and to show what is being said, we must use inverted commas. Okay, I sometimes like to do this. Now, you can absolutely choose which one you're going to do. Some people use double commas on each side, or we sometimes call them 66 and 99. That's probably what you've been using the most. That's what I've used here. Some people choose to just use one of each, so 16, 19. Totally up to you. However, whatever you do, you've got to use it the whole way through. So here I've got hi, it's what's being said, and it's got the speech marks around it. And that's, I'd say, probably where the biggest marvellous mistakes often come in. People are often forgetting which part is being spoken, what's actually being said, and what's kind of the detail around it. Okay, so either one or two, but make sure you're consistent with it. Next thing is our punctuation. Okay, so we need to use punctuation in the same way that we would do if we were writing a normal sentence. So exclamation marks, full stops at the end of sentences, questions at the end of question marks, etc. If it's something that's being said, if it's part of the sentence that's being said, we put it inside the speech marks. Okay, so the example I've got on the screen is that grass looks delicious, comma, speech, said the smallest billy goat gruff. Or we've got an exclamation mark in this one, hey goat. Again, the exclamation mark is inside. Now here again, if we go back to just my simple hi, and I've added an exclamation mark to show how the person might be saying it, I've got 66, so speech mark, hi, exclamation mark, then my 99. It goes inside, all right? Not, hopefully you can see here, you don't want the exclamation mark outside of the speech mark. And you've got an example on the screen here as well, okay? So punctuation lives cozy inside, all right? Right, commas. Now, these are really important. We mentioned them earlier, again, if you're using it as part of the speech, but they're also really important when we're separating what's being said by the speaker and the rest of the text or the rest of that sentence. Okay, so got two different ways of doing this. If we've got, like it says on here, if the speech comes before the verb, so a verb is said, or another word for said. So if we've got speech, then who said it afterwards, we use a comma. All right, so I might say, let's use hi. Now, I'm going to use a comma because I'm going to use my verb afterwards, but just think quickly. Do you reckon I need a comma and an exclamation mark? What do you reckon? Hopefully you went, nah, Mrs. Elmore, you don't need both. And you're absolutely right. You wouldn't put a comma next to an exclamation mark in a normal sentence. So I'm just going to do hi, comma. Again, remember it goes inside my speech marks. Okay, my punctuation lives inside, not outside alone. So hi, and then I'm going to say, said Mrs. Elmore. Now we've got loads on using better words than said coming a bit later on in our learning. But for today, just for simplicity, I've used said there. So hi, said Mrs. E. And the important bit there is my comma, because I've got my verb afterwards. All right, can you see that, guys? Yeah, and again, we've got our 2 examples on here on the board as well. So direct speech, before the verb, we've used a comma. Okay. Right, so we've spoken a bit about this before, but just to kind of reiterate, I changed the exclamation mark to a comma to show that I could do that. If I was just saying, hi, said Mrs. E, I could do that. However, if we've got the speech, then the verb, so speech, verb, then, and I want to use an exclamation mark to show hi, or if I was asking a question, so how are you, said Mrs. E. Instead of using an exclamation mark or a question mark and a comma, we'd use only the exclamation mark or the question. Okay, so you don't ever have 2 bits of punctuation next to each other, do you? We know they'd end up in a fight or something if we put them next to each other in a sentence. So we only use 1 bit of punctuation, either a comma there, or if it's a question mark, or something exciting, an exclamation mark. Okay, so that's if we've got. Number 3 is all about having the speech, so this bit, and then the verb afterwards, okay? What about, though, if we have who's speaking first? So, for example, we've got here, the smallest Billy Goat Gruff said, there's my verb, I'll go first. The verb and the speaker are before what's being said. If it comes first, then we put the comma before the speech. Okay, so if we look here, let's have a look. So if I swapped this around, if I had Mrs. E said hi, then again, let's go through. Firstly, I'm going to want my speech marks around what's being said. So here, so hi. But this time, I need the comma before what's being said. Okay, so before we had speech, comma, verb, now we have verb, comma, speech. It's the other way round. Okay, that's a good way of thinking about it. Think about it flipped round the opposite. So I'd need to add my comma here. We go, so here we've got speech, comma, verb, or we've got verb, comma, speech. And remember, the speech always needs our 66 and our 99 around it. Okay, most important thing there. Okay, I'm going to say I think these 2 rules, number 3 and number 4, are probably the hardest rules. Okay, the way I remember it, speech, comma, verb, verb, comma, speech. Okay, separate it that way. Come up with some kind of, I tend to chant it. You know me, I'm a chanter. But have a look and think about where that might fit. Okay, and have a look at these examples to help you as well. All right, if you're ready to move on, I'm going to talk to you a bit about punctuation inside inverted commas as well. Okay, so again, here we had hi, comma, said Mrs. E, speech, comma, verb. If I've got the verb before the speech, so verb, comma, speech, then I also need to include some punctuation at the end of my sentence. If we look here, so Mrs. E said, comma, hi. If that's the end of my sentence, I can't just leave it hanging, can I? It needs to have a full stop. And again, where does the punctuation live? Inside the speech marks. So if it's at the end of my sentence, Mrs. E said, hi. Yeah, I've got my full stop here inside my speech marks. Or if we look on here, we've got the troll shouted, verb, comma, who goes there? And as it's a question, we've got a question mark. So wherever the end of your sentence is, you always need one of those 3 punctuations to finish it. Full stop if it's a sentence, an exclamation mark if it's an exclamation, or a question mark if it's a question. Okay, so hi, comma, said Mrs. E. Mrs. E said, comma, hi, full stop. Okay, so just having a look about where you'd need that punctuation. Right, like I said, this is quite a lot of information as we're recapping what you've done before. For some of you, you're going to be focusing purely on those top 4 things, particularly that rule between the verb, comma, speech, or speech, comma, verb. Okay. For some of you, though, you might want an extra challenge, which is looking at punctuating split speech. Split direct speech is basically where somebody's talking, and when you're writing it down in the middle of something they're saying, you're saying who said it. So, for example, here, I'm light and quiet, said the smallest billy goat Gruff, so I'll go first. I'm light and quiet, so I'll go first is all what the billy goat Gruff is saying, and it's just a case of you're kind of giving information about who's talking in the middle. Now, because that's all one sentence, again, we've got exactly the same rule as we had for number 3. Okay, so we've got I'm light and quiet, comma, verb, speech, comma, verb, said the smallest billy goat Gruff. The only difference here is that because that's all one sentence the billy goat Gruff is saying, we have another comma before we continue the speech, and we don't need a capital sentence afterwards because it's all part of the same sentence. Okay, so all one sentence, we follow our same rule, speech, comma, verb, and then we continue it with the end of that sentence. Okay, the other way of doing this, if it was 2 separate sentences that they were saying, you're right, we can't let the troll beat us, like in this example. Again, we've split it by, we've got speech, speaker, information, more speech, but because this is an extra sentence, we have got a capital letter. Okay, so exactly the same rules as before, new sentence, capital letter here. Okay, and the final thing is that when we're writing it again, I'd say this is our biggest marvellous mistake when we've experimented with it in class before, and it's one that I make all the time, is remembering if we've got people talking and we're writing about it, if we've got a new speaker, then we start a new line. Okay, so if we look here, we can't let him win. He's just a grumpy troll, said the smallest billy goat Gruff. Next line is a different person or a different goat talking, the biggest one. So we start a new line for them. And again, we've got capitals, all right? We use capitals at the start of our speech, unless it's split speech and we're doing the second part, but also new speaker, new line. Okay, so let me catch that up on here. Split speech, rules, and then we've got new speaker, new line. Okay. Right, that's loads of information for you guys to be getting on with there. I know it's a lot to process, so don't worry if you're going, oh, this seems like quite a lot. Like I said, today's our kind of skill lesson where we explore it. First thing I want you to do, if you look up on the website, I've put some little speech bubble activities, and basically all I want you to do is imagine you were having a conversation, or actually have a conversation with someone in your house or with your friend, and write down exactly what you say. So the speech bubble, you've got one for you talking, one for somebody else, one for you, one for somebody else. So you can write down what you'd say. You don't have to worry about said Mrs. Elmore, said Miss Rutherford. You're just writing exactly what's being said. That gives you a chance to practice using the commas and speech marks and things like that. And then if you want to, there's a little extension. You can then write that conversation using things like said, Mrs. Elmore, etc. Okay, have a look. The speech marks should hopefully make it nice and clear for you. Then, final thing for you all to do is to have a look. And again, this is going to totally depend on where you're feeling with this. Some of you might be going, no problem. I love a bit of speech. I'm feeling really confident. Some of you might be going, this doesn't look very familiar at all. I'm really not sure. And wherever you're at is totally fine. On the website, there are sheets for learning, which is a case of literally there's some stuff being said. You just need to have a go at adding the correct speech punctuation. Using is very similar, but there's a few more mistakes to be found, and you're thinking about what's outside of the speech marks as well as what's inside. Exploring, the same as using really, but there's a bit of split speech there. Have a look and choose the same way you would in class. Choose the right level for you. And then there's a little mini burst on there as well if you're feeling bold and confident, which is to imagine writing the conversation between Liam and his parents after his crazy assembly actions in school. There's a little bit of an example there, like an I do for you to see, and you guys can have a go. All right. Tomorrow we'll revisit this, have a think about how we can apply it. I'll take a picture of this as well once it's full to put up as well. Take it easy, guys.